Memory palaces aren't some fluffy mind trick. They're an ancient hack baked into how your brain stores location plus meaning. Okay, so here's the mechanism in plain English. Your brain loves spatial cues. Give it a place, like a hallway, a kitchen, the route from your front door to your car, and then you hang each item on a specific spot. First, you build the where. Then you drop the what onto it. That's it. No magic. Just patterning your recall so it has something easy to follow. Now, picture this. Ancient Greek orators used this method to deliver speeches like it was autopilot. Modern memory champions still do it, and they're not doing it with brute force memorization. They're doing it with structure. And yes, people have trained to memorize huge lists fast by building palaces and drilling retrieval. But here's the part nobody talks about. Constructing a palace isn't the hard part. Your timing is. Your first attempt always hits weird. So we're going step by step from zero. And by the end, you'll know how to memorize 50 items in 10 minutes using a simple palace you can build in your own space. Sound familiar? First can memorize while first am trying, but then it disappears. Wait for what fixes that. Quick teaser for next. We'll do a step-by-step palace build together with a real example like stuff goes where, how big to make it in your head, and how to run the recall loop so it sticks. Cognitive science basics. Chunking, encoding, and retrieval. Your brain doesn't save memories like a camera roll. It files stuff in a way that's useful for later recall. And when you're trying to memorize 50 items in 10 minutes, the winning move is understanding 3 levers: chunking, encoding, and retrieval. That's the whole game. Here's the deal with chunking. Short-term memory is limited, so you can't just dump 50 separate things into it and expect magic. You're supposed to group related details into chunks, bigger units your brain can hold and move around. That's why a phone number comes as a few clusters, not 10 single digits mashed together. In memory palace terms, chunking means you're not counting 50 random nouns. You're mapping them onto locations that function like folders. Andrew Huberman talks a lot about how attention and salience change what gets stored and what gets ignored. Chunking gives your attention a job to do. It turns chaos into a path. Now encoding. Encoding is what happens when your brain tags an experience so it can be found later. For fast memorization, you want encoding that's vivid, structured, and kind of weird. Not fantasy for the sake of fantasy, though. More like, make each item easy to distinguish from the next, and attach it to a consistent cue. This is where the metaphor of meaning helps without getting academic. If an item doesn't have a strong sensory anchor, like color, texture, action, emotion, or sound, your brain has a harder time deciding it's worth keeping. Walter Mischel's work on the marshmallow test isn't about memory palaces, but it does highlight something relevant. Your brain prioritizes cues that drive behavior in the moment. In your palace, the cue is the location, and the behavior is the follow-the-scene story you build around each object. Okay, retrieval. Retrieval is you pulling information out, not just recognizing it. That difference matters. Daniel Kahneman talks about how mental shortcuts and attention shape what we access. If your encoding is fuzzy, retrieval will fail even if the memory feels somewhere in there. And retrieval practice is one of the most reliable ways to strengthen access. Your brain gets better at the pull, not just the storage. With a memory palace, retrieval is basically your walkthrough. You start at the first spot, extract the stored item, then move on. Every time you do that, you're training the route your brain uses to find the details again. Anders Ericsson's work on deliberate practice fits here too. You improve most when you repeatedly do the hard part with feedback. So if you miss items, don't shrug. Correct on the next pass. Here's a super practical example to make it feel doable. Pick a familiar route, your kitchen walking path, starting at the front door and ending by the sink. Put chunk-friendly beats along it. Entrance hallway, tabletop, chair, fridge area, stove, sink. Then assign your items to spots within each beat. Suppose your first beat is entrance. You might store 3 items there by making a mini scene. A bright orange umbrella standing awkwardly by the door, a stapler stuck to the wall like it's trying to escape, and a tiny alarm clock ringing an unusual sound. Why so specific? Each object has a distinct visual feature and an action-like presence. Your brain loves contrast. Next, B gets its own mini-world. So your retrieval cue is spatial and your items are separable. One more thing that matters for 50 items fast: don't overstuff a single location. If one spot carries too many details, encoding gets messy and retrieval turns into guessing. Instead, use the palace like a grid, even if your brain doesn't think in grids. You can do this by creating subcues. The left side of a shelf, the top edge of a table, the corner near a light switch, the space under a chair. That's still chunking, just finer. And if you're following a memory champion style approach, the champions tend to obsess over cues and structure. Clear starting point, consistent route order, and repeated retrieval walks. The method isn't mystical. It's organized. But here's the part nobody talks about. Encoding quality and retrieval scheduling are tied together. If you only study and never pull, your brain might store a vague trace you can't access under pressure. So after your first build, do a quick retrieval sweep immediately. Then again shortly after, like you're stress testing the palace. Keep it lightweight, but make it a real recall attempt. That's how you turn a palace from a pretty map into a working retrieval machine. Which one are you going to try first? Chunking your 50 items into beat-sized groups? Or building a more vivid encoding scene for each location? Drop it below. If your brain like this, hit subscribe. More brain hacks every week. Choose the right memory palace, spatial maps, and capacity planning. Ancient Greek orators didn't just remember things. They packed ideas into real-looking spaces. It fits with what we know about memory. Your brain loves to store info with strong cues, and location is one of the strongest cues you've got. That's why the method of loci works so well. Your recall isn't random. It's routed through a map in your head. So here's the deal. When you pick a memory palace, you're not picking a place. You're picking a navigation system. You need a spatial map you can reliably walk through, without thinking too hard. If you're building a palace in a place you barely know, your own brain will hesitate, and that pause costs you everything when you're trying to memorize fast. Quick question. Do you know the exact order of rooms in your apartment without looking? If you do, that's gold. Now let's talk capacity planning, the part that people gloss over. Your palace can't be infinite. It has a practical ceiling based on how many distinct spots you can clearly separate and revisit in order. Think slots, not rooms. A corridor gives you fewer slots than a full house with multiple turns and landmarks. A single open living room will feel squished because you've got fewer sharp boundaries to anchor each item. Your goal is clarity, not grandeur. You want this spot energy, not a kind of over there energy. Try this step by step, no fluff. Use a familiar route from your front door to the kitchen, then to the living room, then to a hallway, then to the bathroom. Assign one item per landmark size stop. Doorknob, coat hook, shoe spot, light switch, doorway arch, couch corner, bookshelf edge, hallway picture, mirror frame. Notice how each one has a visual boundary and a stable position relative to the route. If you can close your eyes and still point to the next stop, it's usable. If you can't, that stop is too vague. Swap it for something more specific, like a specific mug shelf, a particular throw pillow edge, or the corner of a rug. Here's the mechanism in plain English. When retrieval time comes, your brain replays the route, not the facts. If your route is messy, you get messy recall. So how do you build sensory hooks you can actually reuse? Start with a quick rule. For each item, give it at least one strong sensory anchor and one motion or action anchor. Sensory anchor could be a sound, a squeaky door, a texture, sandpaper tag, a smell, burnt toast, a color that feels too intense to ignore, or a taste like cute, tart lemon. Motion/action anchor could be spinning, dripping, bouncing, hiding, falling apart, or wearing something wrong. You're not writing a movie script. You're forcing your brain to take a snapshot that feels alive. Cal Newport talks about attention as a skill you can train. Memory champs basically train attention with purpose in their imagery. Anders Ericsson's deliberate practice angle fits too. Tiny, repeatable reps, not hope. Now let's talk distinctiveness, because this is where most people crash and burn. If you memorize 50 items with the same type of image, like 50 animals sitting politely in a row, your mind won't separate them cleanly. Instead, stagger features. Make half of them loud and half of them silent, sounding weird. Make some wet, some dry, some bright, some dim, some moving fast, some frozen mid-action. One item might be glossy and reflective. The next might be matte and dusty. Give them different sizes too. Tiny things in your palace are great cues when bigger things dominate the frame. Also, vary orientation. Rotate some images sideways. Make others upright. Flip one upside down like it's stuck in the last frame of a dream. Your only job is to make confusion feel impossible. Weirdness is the secret sauce, but the catch is, weird has to be specific. A crazy scene isn't enough. Your brain needs a detail that feels sharp. Think of it like a password. A sharp password is weird and memorable. A vague password just gets forgotten. Try this. Attach one absurd rule to the item. Example: the lemon is wearing roller skates. The spoon is steaming like a haunted kettle. A rubber band is pulling itself into a knot. The action makes it retrievable. The absurd rule makes it unique. It's also consistent with how retrieval cues work. When you rebuild the context in your head, the item reappears faster. Here's a step-by-step palace imagery example you can steal. Pick a simple route you already know, like your living room from front door to couch to kitchen. Assign a few anchor spots: doormat, hallway hook, light switch, coffee table corner, kitchen sink rim. Now test your imagery system on just 2 items so you can feel the difference. Item 1. A wet matchstick clicking in midair, leaving a tiny smell of smoke. Item 1 has sound, clicking, smell, smoke, texture, wet, and motion midair. Item 2. A velvet envelope that's upside down and slowly melting into a puddle of ink. 2 sensory hooks, 2 distinct materials, 2 different motion types. If your images aren't vivid, you're not done. You're just guessing. And guessing doesn't hold under speed. Bottom line: sensory hooks make contact, distinctiveness prevents blending, and weirdness gives you a retrieval tag your brain can't ignore. Want the part nobody talks about? The imagery doesn't have to be pretty. It has to be different on purpose. Which sensory hook are you going to start with first? Sound, texture, smell, or motion? Drop it below. If your brain like this, hit subscribe. More brain hacks every week. Place and link protocol, from image to location to order. Your brain loves structure. That's why the method of loci works so well for memorizing a list in order. Like an ancient Greek orator pacing the stage, or a modern memory champion walking a mental route. You're not just storing images. You're placing them somewhere, then using the path to retrieve them. Here's the mechanism in plain English. You take an image that represents an item, you attach it to a specific location, and then the locations themselves force the order. If your locations are in a clear sequence, front door, hallway, kitchen, couch, bathroom, then the first item naturally comes from the first location, the second item from the second location, and so on. No, what was it again? Scramble. It's recall by navigation. Your mind goes, route first, images second. Now, the place and link protocol. Step 1. Pick your locations like they're stepping stones. Keep them stable and visual, real stuff you can walk to in your imagination. A chair by the window, a coat rack, a light switch, the fridge door, the doormat. Step 2. For each item, build a vivid image that's strongly visual and a little weird. The weirder, the more replayable. Step 3. Fuse image to location. Not on the idea of the chair, but the chair is doing the thing. Give your image a reason to happen there. Your brain loves causality, even if it's nonsense. Food on the kitchen counter? Great. A giant toothbrush glued to the doormat? Even better, because now it screams that location. Quick example, so it clicks. Say you need to memorize items in order. Your first target is an orange, then a banana, then a jar of peanut butter, then a red pen, just as a sample. Put an orange on your first location. Maybe your front door has an orange wedged in it like a stubborn doorstop. Then the banana goes on the second location. The hallway wall is sweating bananas, dripping them like wallpaper. Next jar of peanut butter belongs at the third stop. The kitchen sink is filled to the brim with thick peanut butter, like reality slipped for a second. Then the red pen goes on the fourth stop. The bathroom mirror is covered in red pen signatures where you'd normally see your reflection. Notice what you did? Each item got an anchor, and the order comes from the walk you're already doing in your head. But here's the part nobody talks about. Links can't be floating. They've got to stick to the location and to the item. If you just picture the orange somewhere in your palace, you'll lose it under pressure. Instead, you weld the orange to the door, you make the banana part of the hallway, you let the peanut butter fill the sink, you turn the pen into something the mirror can't ignore. Your retrieval becomes automatic because every spot is loaded with a story thread. That's also why champions don't overpolish. They go for clarity and stickiness over art. And that's the training from zero part. Start with just 5 locations you know cold. Use simple items and exaggerated placement. Practice recalling them in order until it feels like reading street signs, not decoding symbols. Once that feels easy, add links by turning each image into an event in that spot. Something happening there, not just sitting there. Your brain will start walking the route without you pushing it. Memorization becomes navigation. Hold that thought, because the next step is where you level up hard. How you pick palace locations that survive real stress, and how you avoid collisions when the list gets bigger. Which one are you going to try first? Your home, a familiar path, or a made-up room that you can walk through? Drop it below. If your brain like this, hit subscribe. More brain hacks every week. 10-minute practice plan, timing, repetition, and error recovery. Most people don't need a bigger palace. They need a better loop for timing, repetition, and error recovery. That's the stuff memory champions dial in. Quick reps with fast course correction when your recall stumbles. Sound familiar? You build a route, you feel confident. Then one item goes missing and the rest starts wobbling like dominoes. Here's the mechanism in plain English. Memory palaces work because your brain can reuse spatial cues. Your route is a scaffold. The cleanest way to make it stick in 10 minutes is to run tight cycles. Encode, test, correct. Encode the next chunk of items while you're fresh, then immediately do a mini recall sweep. Don't wait until the end. If you've studied deliberate practice with Anders Ericsson's work, the key idea is feedback fast, not later. Your brain learns what's solid by seeing what breaks. Timing-wise, treat your 10 minutes like a series of sprints, not one marathon. You start with a warm-up pass. Walk your route slowly in your mind and check that the path feels obvious. Next, add a small batch of items to distinct stops, like a door, a light switch, a sink, a bookshelf. Then you test right away by tracing the same route while naming the items. If you're using 50 items, your pace should feel steady. You're not trying to go slow and perfect. You're trying to go smooth enough that errors show up quickly. Quick errors are useful. Now, the repetition part. Most folks repeat in the wrong direction. Either they reread the list or they keep building instead of retrieving. You want retrieval as the repetition. Each time you recall, you're strengthening the exact memory paths your brain will use later. James Clear talks about tiny improvements compounding, and BJ Fogg's behavior work lines up with this too. Make the practice action so clear and small that you actually do it again and again. So each 10-minute session should include at least one full walk-in recall, run, plus a shorter second run where you focus on your weak stops. Error recovery is the secret sauce nobody talks about. When you miss an item, don't spiral. Stop the sweep for a second and re-anchor, then keep going. Your route is the job. Your job isn't to prove you're perfect. Here's the move. Go to the last correct stop, drop the missing item back in using a vivid cue, then resume from the next stop as if nothing happened. Think of it like driving and getting a wrong turn. You correct the wheel, then continue to your destination. No crash and burn. Also, don't fix errors by getting more creative forever. That turns into procrastination disguised as technique. Pick a clear replacement, a physical location tweak, a stronger action, or a more distinctive object. If your item keeps slipping, make it more sensory, something you can notice in your mind. Smell, texture, motion, temperature. Like Andrew Huberman talks about, attention and arousal affect learning. So give your brain something it can grab instantly, not something poetic and abstract. Quick practice example you can run today. Choose a familiar hallway route with, say, around 10 memorable stops: door handle, welcome mat spot, picture frame edge, coat hook, stair step corner, and so on. Put items into those stops with consistent structure. Object plus action. Door handle, a red umbrella dripping water. Coat hook, a tiny chef hat hanging crooked. Stair corner, a balloon tied to the railing, wobbling. Do a recall sweep immediately. If you miss the chef hat, don't hunt your whole palace. Go back to the coat hook, exaggerate the crooked angle and the chef vibe, then continue to the next stop. That fix and resume is what turns slips into progress. But here's the part everybody skips. After the 10 minutes, you should end on retrieval, not on tweaking. Don't keep editing. Close the loop while it's fresh so your next run starts faster. Then, next time you practice, start with the exact same route and do another retrieval sweep. Shorter, smoother, fewer pauses. That's how repetition becomes compounding. Which one are you going to try first? Faster recall sweeps, tighter timing sprints, or the fix and resume error recovery? Drop it below. If your brain liked this, hit subscribe. More brain hacks every week. Evidence-based maintenance. How to retain and measure performance. Calm down. Your memory palace isn't a set it and forget it thing. It's more like a workout plan. If you want performance that sticks, you need maintenance you can actually measure, not vibes. That matters because your brain will use what you repeat, and it drops what you don't. Ever notice how a skill feels sharp one week and gone the next? Here's the mechanism in plain English. You're encoding locations plus vivid objects, then you're reactivating them. The reactivation is the real work. Retrieval practice trains your brain to pull the info back out, and spaced repetition keeps those retrieval cues from fading. Alan Baddeley gets credit for the framework people toss around, but the practical takeaway aligns with a ton of memory and learning work. The thing that improves recall is calling it back from your head, then repeating that over time. Matthew Walker also leans hard on sleep's role in memory consolidation, and you can feel it when you skip sleep and your recall gets mushy. So how do you retain and measure performance without turning this into a spreadsheet nightmare? Track 3 simple signals: speed, accuracy, and consistency. Speed could be how long it takes you to recall the full list in order. Accuracy is how many items you miss or swap. Consistency is whether your recall holds up across days, not just right after practice. Keep notes so you're not guessing. If you want an evidence-based approach, use the same mindset Anders Ericsson uses for deliberate practice. You don't just repeat, you tighten what's weak. Error patterns are data. Missed loci means your location cues aren't stable. Swapped items means your image sequence isn't sticky. Half-recalled scenes mean the objects need clearer hooks. Now for the palace maintenance recipe, you can start today. After building your palace and placing your items, do a short check run soon. Then don't stop there. Run a quick recall session the next day, then again a couple days later, then stretch it out. Each session should be a retrieval test. No peeking, no first kind of remember. Write down what went wrong, then adjust only what needs it. If an item keeps failing, rebuild it with a more distinctive object and stronger interaction with the location. That matches the deliberate practice logic. Improve the target, not the whole thing. James Clear would call this making the process obvious and consistent. Small reps, clear feedback, fast iteration. But here's the part nobody talks about. Maintenance also needs quality control, not just repetition. When you recall, ask yourself what the brain did. Did you lose track of direction in the hallway? That's a traversal issue. Did your images blur together? That's a vividness and separation issue. Did you forget the first few items only? That's a primacy cue issue. Keep it tight. Change one variable at a time so your measurements mean something. And don't ignore sleep. If your practice is late and your recall tanks, that's not you being lazy. That's consolidation getting shorted, which is exactly the kind of thing Matthew Walker talks about when he connects sleep to memory processing. And this is where it gets wild. You can pressure test your palace like a memory champion. After a warm-up, do a timed recall from the same entry point every time. Then do a second run without looking, but this time in the reverse order. That reveals whether your loci are truly anchored or you're only skating on forward familiarity. Modern memory work often looks like chunking plus rapid retrieval, but the maintenance one is feedback loops. You're training retrieval pathways, then measuring whether the pathways stay open as days pass. Which one are you going to try first? Tracking speed, tracking accuracy, or reverse order recall? Drop it below. If your brain like this, hit subscribe. More brain hacks every week. So here's the real ending to Memory Palace 1-on-1. You just built a mental map, then taught your brain to walk it. 50 items, 10 minutes. That means you're not memorizing, you're navigating, and that changes everything. Think about what you actually did. You picked locations you can picture, you assigned each item to a spot, and you let your brain do the heavy lifting with images and motion. That's the method of loci. Ancient Greek orators used it, and once you feel it work, it makes sense why it's stuck. Your brain loves structure. It loves routes. It hates random piles. Now, quick reality check. You didn't need a magic trick. You needed a clean scene, a consistent palace, and practice that's deliberate, like Cal Newport would say with focus, but in memory form. You're training retrieval, not storage. And retrieval is where performance shows up. Try this right now. Build one tiny palace, just 5 rooms or even 5 spots, and place 5 items there. Walk it once slowly, then walk it again faster. Notice how the second run feels smoother. That's your recall getting dialed in. Also, if it crumbles, don't panic. That's normal. Your palace just needs a clearer image and a stronger route. But here's the part nobody talks about. Your palace gets better when you make it personal. Add one weird detail you'd never forget. Make it feel like you're stepping into your own movie. Want to be unstoppable? Rehearse the route the same way you'd rehearse a song. Short sessions, frequent returns. Anders Ericsson would call that deliberate practice. You're shaping the skill. And one more plot twist. You don't have to go for world record speed right away. Even the modern memory champions started by learning how to build palaces that don't sabotage them. Detail first. Order second. Speed shows up later, like it's just waiting for you to stop rushing. Okay, question for you. Which are you going to try first? The 5-spot mini palace or a full 50-item run with a palace you can picture fast? Drop it below. If your brain like this, hit subscribe. More brain hacks every week.